Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today, and welcome to this live stream preview event for Sophe's 2020 Virtual Advocacy Summit. During this live stream session, you will gain a glimpse of the skills you will gain by attending the Sophe's Virtual Advocacy Summit. Sophe's Virtual Advocacy Summit will take place October 13th and 14th, 2020. Take advantage of Sophe's early bird registration rates before September 11th. Put your skills into practice through virtual Hill visits, access a pre-summit workshop, the Eco America's Climate for Health Ambassadors Training, and earn up to 15.75 CECH credits. As we go through the presentations, please feel free to place your questions and comments in the chat box on the platform you have chosen. We will have time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. Please complete the evaluation form at the end of the session. Now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today's session. Our first speaker, Dr. Mustafa Dibon from the University of Texas School Health Science Center School of Public Health. Dr. Dibon is a board-certified medical and veterinarian entomologist and has worked over 27 years in the field of public health entomology and vector-borne diseases. He is a retired colonel from the U.S. Army. He will be speaking on the Climate for Health Ambassadors Training. Our second speaker, Don Shia, is the political director from Student PIRGs. Don directs the National Political Strategy and Grant Fundraising for the Student PIRGs. Don has managed successful campaigns from coast to coast to cap global warming pollution, fight the high cost of higher education, and make voting more accessible for students. Our third speaker, Dr. Heidi Hancher-Rauch, is the Director of Public Health Program at the University of Indianapolis. Dr. Hancher-Rauch has more than 20 years of experience as a public health educator with an emphasis on health education and promotion in hospitals, communities, and work sites. She works with the Indiana Minority Health Coalition as a program evaluator and is on the Board of Trustees for the Society of Public Health Education as the Advocacy and Resolution Trustee. Our final speaker, Dr. Keely Reese, is a professor at the Department of Health Education and Health Promotion at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Dr. Reese is in her 20th year of the University Life and Health Education. She is a professor in the Department of Health Education and Health Promotion at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Dr. Reese's research and teaching has focused on numerous issues in the health field for over 20 years. Dr. Reese has been a faculty co-sponsor for the Eta Sigma Gamma Beta Phi chapter since 2003. We will go ahead and get started with our first speaker.
Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. I thank you all for joining us. Aaron has already introduced me, so this slide, we can get it at the end if you want some information about me. Next slide. On July 6, 2020, I took a 4-hour training at the National Association of County and City Health Officials virtual and annual meeting. And there I learned, about the knowledge, the resources, and also support to speak on climate change and solutions. After that, I read and signed the agreement to finalize my acceptance into the ambassador program. After that, I received a certificate and Climate for Health Ambassador designation, which I'm very proud of, and I can now have credibility in speaking. I also, a week and a half later, we attended the Climate for Health Ambassadors Orientation, where the director for Climate for Health went over all the, not only the expectations, but also how to report our presentations, and also gave us all the information that we can go into Google Drive, where all the information on Climate for Health Ambassadors is. Next slide. The benefits of taking this training and also being a Climate for Health ambassador is it offers me a tool and a chance to speak about, act on, and engage and advocate for climate solutions. And also, you become a part of the Eco America, and Eco America really hosts weekly webcasts in Let's Talk Climate series that pertain to important topics in climate change. And one important one is coming up on September 17th, and the title for it is A Vote for Health is a Vote for Climate. And also, because of being a Climate for Health ambassadors, you get to join the Climate for Health Ambassador quarterly call, and sometimes they have two, sometimes they have three during the quarter. And I think the next one is September 17th, and the other one is December 9th. And these are very important ones, and I'm looking forward to them. Next slide, please. Go back to the other slide. I also attended on August 11th, attended Health Voices for Climate Action Storytelling Training. This was very important to me and also very interesting because they show you, it's like a video. You learn how to make a video, you learn how to record, and you learn how to tell your own story. And that's very important. I have a chance to tell a story about Hurricane Harvey, and I haven't done that yet, but that's really an interesting aspect of going, not only recording yourself, but telling a story, whatever it is. I also attended an American Climate Leadership Summit, and that was every Thursday in August, from August the 6th to August 27th. And there were a lot of interesting talks, not only by health personnel, but also by religious personnel and environmentalists. It was really a great leadership summit. And of course, because of taking the class and learning, and now I want to be an advocate, I was able to give a presentation to Sierra Club Mineral King Group in Visalia, California on August 31, 2020. And I did that on climate health and also talked a little bit about the solutions, the advocacy, and also what's going on even locally in California right now with the extreme weather and heat and wildfires. And I had about 41 participants. And after the hour, we really stayed about 15 minutes after with a lot of questions. And the people that participated were not only members of the Sierra Club, but there were a lot of environmentalists, religious personnel, and energy personnel. So to me, that was really a great beginning to start giving a presentation on. That was a big benefit to me. And of course, I also volunteered to speak and share with attendees at Sophe's September 8 webinar, which is taking up today. And that's for me, to share with you what I learned, why it's important. And to me, it was really a great experience, and I intend to continue with it. And so far, I've only given one presentation, but I plan on giving two or three more, and keep on. And I would like you all to join us and maybe take the training if possible, so you can become one of the Climate for Health ambassadors. Next slide, please. I would like to thank Rebecca Herrera. She is the director for Climate for Health and Eco America. She's really a big knowledge in this, and also provides you with all the information and anything that you need to know about the Climate for Health ambassador. She's out there guiding you, and she can give you all the information and updates you with all the webcasts that are coming, webinars, and so forth. I also would like to thank Chelsea Gridley Smith and Daniel Shadline from NATRO, who introduced me to the idea of attending the training. So I thank them. I also would like to thank Aaron and Heather for guiding me through this presentation and preparing it and getting it so that I can talk to you today. Thank you for listening.
Hey y'all, my name's Dawn. I'm the political director for the Student PIRGs, or Public Interest Research Groups, and I'm going to talk for a couple minutes about our 100% renewable energy campuses campaign. So if you're like me, you look at climate change and probably have been impacted by it. So I was in New Jersey when Irma hit. I was in Florida, when Irma hit. I was in New Jersey when Sandy hit. And my family's from California, where all the wildfires have really escalated over the last decade. And as a global issue can feel really overwhelming, and wanted to give you something concrete you can do on your campuses to actually move the ball forward on moving our energy system towards 100% renewables. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about my background and how you can reach me. This is my Twitter DM, Dan like Dawn. Chinese is confusing. We can go to the next slide. And I've spent 7 years in California with CalPERG students, 5 years directing our work in New Jersey, and now call St. Pete, Florida home. And I've knocked on doors on political issues in 12 states and DC. And here's a picture of an evolution of my hair. I think that was like my first press conference in 2005 on like a transportation issue. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So a little background on why campuses. So I have 3 big reasons why the work on campuses is really essential to actually moving forward on climate. Number one, there are 20 million college students in the United States. If they were a state, they would be the 4th largest state in the entire country. That's wild. 2 is they're self-contained communities. So it's actually easier to shift to 100% renewable energy on a campus than it is for a city or a county, for example. And then 3, there have literally been no movements that have been successful politically in the country without young people actually involved. So whether you're a faculty member or a student group leader or an administrator, you have the ability to actually motivate young people, get them involved, and leverage their political power to actually make change. So here are a couple of photos of our California and Massachusetts team actually lobbying to pass their state bills and get their campuses to make these commitments. So, I think we see a lot the catchphrase of, think global, act local. It's not just a catchphrase. It is actually how most politics work. If you can get a campus to make a commitment, it is way more likely for a city or a county to make a commitment. And if a bunch of cities and counties make that commitment, it is way more likely for a state to then pass that bill as well. So, we're at a place where most states have passed, renewable portfolio standards, requirements for a certain percentage of renewable energy. I think it's time to move the campaign forward and get more states to commit to 100% renewable energy. So let's move on. I'm going to talk about Vanderbilt as a case study first, and then just talk about how to plan these campaigns on your own campuses. So what we knew about Vanderbilt was that, number one, the campus was making progress on sustainability. They'd actually recently stopped using coal, although to shift to natural gas. So not great, but making progress. We knew the chancellor was retiring, so perhaps they were looking for a legacy issue to hang their hat on their last year, and that the school thought of itself as a leading university in the Southeast and thought of its peers as being Ivy League and Duke. So we knew that they were looking for an edge on these campuses to go, hey, we're just as good or better than these schools. So we came into the strategy thinking it's a hero strategy. The campus was likely to do this if we offered it as an opportunity to make the campus look good. So the first thing you want to do in a campaign is to think about the message. So here's the message that one of the student leaders said in a campus newspaper, basically saying you will be a leader in the Southeast if you commit to 100% renewable energy. It's within your self-interest to be a leader in the South and actually making 100% renewable energy commitment. I would say that worked. So if we go to the next slide, this is what the chancellor actually said after we won the campaign. Spoiler, we won the campaign. So they said, by making this commitment, hopefully this is a model that can be scaled up by our city, other institutions in higher education, and our global society. That is exactly our strategy. So we knew that that message was effective. Okay, so then how do you get that message out? That is largely through your outside game. So the students at Vanderbilt did a couple of things. Number one is they did a bunch of in-person days of action. Obviously, we can't do that now. Now you would do that through a Zoom day of action. Basically, it was a table where they got a ton of petitions and got visibility on the campaign. They ended up getting over 3,400 petition signatures, which is half of the undergraduate student body. And this campaign was run in one semester, so pretty impressive. They also got the student government to pass a resolution with this message, Vanderbilt leading the South, and 76 student groups endorsing the campaign, saying, hey, we could be a leader in the South on 100% renewables if we make this commitment. They also got over 100 volunteers involved in the campaign as well. Okay, so then they took all of this information and then they played the inside game. Basically, this is the lobbying or advocacy part of your campaign. They first met with the Associate Vice Chancellor, Mike Perez, who's pretty supportive of the campaign, and made the introduction to the Vice Chancellor. The Vice Chancellor was impressed with all of the work that they had done on the ground, but told the students that they needed to review the commitments that they currently had. So then they sort of scaled up and did a media and visibility campaign. So if you go to the next slide, here are some headlines from their campaign. So they knew that all of the vice chancellors, the chancellor themselves, would be reading the student newspapers. I know a lot of campuses, you're like, nobody reads the paper, but actually a lot of decision makers do. And they see that as sort of like reading the pulse of the campus. And not only was this good because it got in front of the people that they were trying to influence, but the newspapers actually went out and interviewed these chancellors and vice chancellors as well to go, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about all these petitions the students have gotten? Which provided a little bit more push for them to actually make that decision. So I think there are two more headlines in the next slide. So it just goes to show you how many media hits they got on the campaign. And finally, they won. So pretty impressive campaign. Vanderbilt not only made a commitment to 100%, but actually they made a commitment to produce more renewable energy than they used. And actually this year, they announced the first of its kind partnership with the Tennessee Valley Authority to construct a 35 megawatt solar farm to help the university actually meet its renewable goals. And this is working across the country. So more than 40 campuses have actually met 100% renewable energy goals already. And dozens have made the commitment, and 4 states have actually passed bills to commit to 100% renewable energy. And right now there are 15 active bills as well. So how do you do this in your campus? So the first thing you got to figure out is just what's the status of your school. Have you already made some kind of commitment? Do you already audit your greenhouse gas emissions? Is your campus generally supportive of this type of movement or not? Okay, next step. You then want to make a plan for how you want to run the campaign. So first, who makes the decision? Typically, that's your chancellor or president, with some influence by your board of governors or your trustees. 2 is to do a target analysis. So basically, what does the campus actually want to achieve? So typically, the school will be thinking about enrollment, especially right now with COVID. They'll be thinking about their alumni donations. They'll be thinking about the public perception of the school. And then from that, make a decision on your strategy. So there are basically 4 types of strategy. One is just persuasion. So if you actually think that your campus is supportive, let's go back to the next slide, actually. I'm just going to walk through the strategies. So one is persuasion. So you just say, hey, this is what I think you should do. And then they just make the commitment because it's the right thing to do. 2 is a hero strategy. So that's the Vanderbilt strategy. You think the campus is actually inclined to do it. They just need to see that it actually is really popular. 3 is cover. So perhaps the chancellor wants to take the action, but your board of trustees or your board of governors is not so sure about it. So you actually need to get a ton of petitions and public support so the chancellor can go to the board of trustees and say, look, I have to. Everybody is so into this. Like, come on, we got to do it. And then finally is pressure. So if people are actually, neither of your targets are into the campaign, you're running more of a pressure campaign. So we had a coalition partner actually find out the chancellor's schedule and just show up at every single event that they were at and say, hey, what are you going to do about climate change? And so it's a little more of a pressure tactic. So once you've decided your strategy, then we'll go to the next slide, you will pick your tactics. So you'll decide which one of these are the best ways to demonstrate the support on campus. So for example, if you have a hero strategy, you probably don't want to do a big sit-in, right? You actually want to say, hey, this is a good thing. So you don't want to do a sit-in in the chancellor's office. For hero strategies, we've often taken Valentine's Day and gone, be my climate Valentine, and sent really positive cards to an administrator who's making the decision. And you may want to do LTEs and op-eds. You may want to do meetings, events, or rallies. Obviously, be aware of the COVID constraints and do that safely. Get a student government or a faculty senate resolution that shows that they're in support of the campaign. You don't have to do all of these. You should just decide which ones fit into your strategy. Okay. And then finally, here are some resources. So certainly DM me if you're on Twitter, if you're interested in running the campaign. But we also have a full activist toolkit at studentpergs.org. We have a full website dedicated to this campaign, walking through these steps in detail at go100%renewablecampus.org. And then we've got to recognize that COVID has made campaigning really difficult and different. So we actually have a whole remote tactics library on how to actually run these campaigns in a remote or digital world. So that's that tiny URL there. It's basically a community resource on what our students have been doing on the ground. So I will say that we're at 100 campuses right now across the country. We've already hired over 1,000 interns on issues like this. So it's very possible to still run campaigns successfully remotely. So definitely check out that tactics library from there. All right, that's all I've got.
Hi, I'm going to take over now. My name is Heidi Hancher-Rauch, and as Aaron introduced me earlier, I currently serve as the trustee for the Board of Trustees for Sophe as the trustee for advocacy and resolution. So I've done quite a bit of advocacy work. I additionally have published in this area, and some of the information that I share with you will come from one of those publications. So I'm just going to give you a bit of very brief background on some advocacy strategies overall, and then we'll talk about how you can really expound upon that and take it to the next level when you attend our Virtual Advocacy Summit next month. So, one of the things that we struggle with in health advocacy is we know as professionals that this is an expectation of us. Additionally, hopefully you were taught on some level when you were going through your academic training that advocacy was important, and you learned at least basic steps in participating in health advocacy. So then why is it that so many of us are maybe a little bit hesitant to directly engage in advocacy strategies? We know that over 75% of professionals say that they've participated in something advocacy related. But then if you dig a little bit deeper, you can see that just over a third of current university faculty at the time of the study stated that they had received college level training on health advocacy. So why is that important? Well, if we are not training our next generation of educators about the importance of health advocacy, then that's something that often can be left out of the classroom as we are teaching, as our faculty experiences day to day. So thank you. So, why is it that so many of us are fearful to engage? And I would say a lot of us feel this first one right now, this idea about lack of time. Like, really, you're asking me to participate in advocacy on top of all the other things that I have going on, right? So, people often just say, I just can't, I don't have time to do it. So we'll address that in a minute. In addition, those competing priorities, and that, maybe your priorities as an employee and you think that you shouldn't or you can't advocate. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And often, it kind of ties back to that lack of time, but with our competing priorities as well, those of us who are in faculty positions, it may be that I'm so overwhelmed with my teaching, and I'm focused on my teaching that it takes a lot of extra planning and extra work to try to get my students to the State House or try to engage directly with legislators. And so we have these competing priorities. Or maybe I work at the local health department and I've been told through the rumor mill that, oh, you can't advocate. That's not something we should be doing. A lot of us feel politically disgruntled. You've fought hard for what you believe is right sometimes, and it maybe wasn't successful. And so that can be really hard to pick yourself back up and focus on some of those smaller wins and continue just to go back at it and dig in on your issues and continue the fight. So, sometimes we do, as advocates, every once in a while, it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel disgruntled. It's okay to feel disheartened, but then give yourself a few moments to pull it back together, and then we have to get right back at it. And then, last but not least, not believing that our efforts will make a difference. And I think that kind of goes along with the political disgruntledness as well. We've seen that it maybe hasn't worked in the past, or that we have the really good argument and we spend all the time putting it together, and then we feel like nobody listens to us, they won't take meetings with us. And you say, well, why do I even try? It doesn't make a difference. Or there are so many other people engaged. Why does it matter if I get engaged? I will rely on others to carry that weight of the advocacy strategies. And so, a lot of times it's kind of easy for us to think that somebody else will do it. Somebody else will take up that mantle. They'll feel more passionate about it than I do, or they have more time than I do, or they are in roles that allow them to do that. But if we're constantly relying on others, it doesn't get done. So why do you absolutely need advocacy skills? Well, we know that we already talked about it is a professional responsibility. We absolutely need to be engaging in health advocacy. It also plays a pivotal role in making a difference. So it helps us to change environments, to enhance our health status in our communities, to focus on creating better outcomes for individuals, better access to healthcare and environments that allow people to live a healthy life. And it can really influence the quality of lives in the people around us. And so it's, really is a key skill for us as health educators, as public health specialists. And yet, it still can be a challenge to engage current and future health professionals. And some of that is, they maybe didn't receive the training, or there's not enough understanding about the advocacy strategies that we can use and how they can specifically implement those in their own communities. So if you've been following, you know that advocacy recently was given its own area in our responsibilities and competencies for health educators. So now newly designated as Responsibility Area 5, and it is standalone. It's no longer part of the communication related competency. So I think there's definitely movement in the profession to focus on the importance of advocacy and what we can do as public health specialists and health educators if we really learn how to be strong advocates. And again, I would just say we cannot rely on others to do this. It's something that, if we as trained individuals in areas of health and health education won't speak up when it matters for our profession and the people in our communities, then who's going to, right? We cannot wait for others. So if you have even just a little bit of time, there are some simple ways that you can contact your elected officials. And this is just part of the basics of health advocacy that you might pick up on if you would attend a health advocacy summit. But we've ranked these according to the amount of time that you would need to spend in order to participate in this advocacy strategy. So if you've ever heard of ResistBot or some of those other text messaging services, they can allow you to connect directly with your federal level senators or your member of the House of Representatives. And some of you additionally can reach out to your state governor through that app. And it is so simple because it will take your text message and turn it into a professional letter. So if you haven't used that, I definitely recommend that you sign up for it. It's really easy to utilize. And you can even sign up for reminders to contact your elected officials. There are so many mailing lists and alerts in addition that you can receive. And I know you receive some from Sophe. If you are a Sophe member, your Advocacy and Resolutions Committee and your Sophe employees are always working hard to keep you abreast of what are the important topics that could impact you, your communities, the health of those around you. And we send out action alerts to you. And often it's as simple as just clicking the active link in there and filling in your personal email address and information, and it will self-populate the letter for you with all of the work that the Sophe staff has done to put together, a concise document that outlines exactly why it's so important. And you just click send and it goes off. So I would recommend when you get one of those action alerts from Sophe, please just take the 30 seconds that is necessary to click on there and participate. And super easy and not time consuming at all. In addition, if you're on social media, so whether that be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of the above, follow your elected officials, follow them on those social media platforms and communicate with them. And if you see a really important article that shares educational information or something you really want them to read from a trusted source, tag them on their social media, share that with them so that you make sure they see it. So again, something really simple, really easy. You might be reading something anyway that showed up in your feed, and it just takes a second to share that out and tag your elected official to make sure that he or she sees it as well. And then you can follow up with them afterward and say, send in maybe a private email and say, I want to make sure that you saw this article and here it is shared again, and do a bit of a follow-up if you have some additional time. And then phone calls. There are so many easy things that you can do to reach out to your legislators or your elected officials. And even Alexa can help you reach out to your elected officials. There are some of the Alexa apps that you can utilize to do that. But if you're like me, just program their phone numbers into your cell phone, and when you are on your commute to and from work, that's a great time to reach out to your elected officials and share with them what's important to you at that point in time. So those are kind of the least time intensive. And then if you have a little bit more time, take the time to write a letter. It can be a snail mail or hard copy letter. It can be a nice professional email. So whatever you have the time to do, just always remember, sometimes we get very passionate about these areas where, we know the data, we know why changes need to be made. Sometimes it's hard to communicate that with others and do it in a way where we kind of, we do show that we are passionate and very caring, but we always remain the utmost of professionalism. So write the letter. If you have even more time, attend a hearing or a meeting. You can go to your state house. A lot of stuff's happening virtually now. So see if you can attend or watch a live stream of a committee meeting, or however you can get yourself there to show that you are paying attention, that you are interested. If you are even a little bit more confident and comfortable, testify. Sign up, be on the list of individuals to testify and share, that evidence-based background from which we approach public health issues. And especially if you can share that evidence base in combination with the passion and personal story as you're testifying, that is fantastic. If you have the time to do something like that. And then, attend an advocacy event. So plan to attend the Virtual Advocacy Summit. I know the first time I attended about 4 or 5 years ago, it really got me excited about advocacy. It was a fantastic experience, and I carried that over into, my teaching, which Keely Reese will talk to you a little bit more about teaching advocacy here in a minute, but I carried it over into the way that I was teaching my students. I came back and developed a similar opportunity here in Indiana, where we held an advocacy summit at the state level then. So if you have even more time planning an event like that in your community, where you bring students and other professionals together to allow them the chance to have a Capitol Hill moment, right? When COVID finally is out the door and we have the ability to gather in large spaces. But until then, us as health educators, we're used to rolling with the changes, right? So we can do things virtually now and figure out ways that we still can hold lots of wonderful events, even if they need to be virtual right now. Next slide, please. So what I would recommend to you is attend the virtual summit. If you have not yet signed up, we ask that you please get that done. You will hear from experts from across the country and even some international speakers. You'll have the opportunity to hear about a review of the basics. You'll be able to build on those skills and take them to the next level. You'll get the opportunity to practice your advocacy skills in a safe space and be able to get feedback and practice with others. And then you get to put those skills into action. And if you register in time, Sophe will help connect you for a phone meeting with your legislators. And so that is just a wonderful opportunity. And I know that my students and I have always enjoyed this event so much. And we are very much looking forward to being able to participate virtually this year. And the great thing is, in those breakouts, you can choose the sessions that are most appropriate for your skill level and your areas of interest. So if you want to find more ways to teach health advocacy to your students, there'll be sessions on that. If you feel like you're pretty strong in advocacy already and you want to take it to the next level, you'll be able to find more of those advanced level skill sessions. And if you are a bit more of a beginner, we definitely will be covering the basics as well. So I would just say we definitely hope to see you there. And that is it for me. I will turn it over to Keely Reese.
Okay, welcome. Glad you're here with us today, and thanks to the other speakers who've done a great job of introducing why you should be part of the Virtual Advocacy Summit this year and just advocacy in general. I'm a professor at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse and a huge advocate for the Advocacy Summit, and have been coming in person for a good solid decade now, and we'll be there virtually as well with as many students as I can bring as well. So hopefully I've got some folks online with me. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about, you can go to the next slide, how we, at the summit, there's just so many great opportunities for students, but also for faculty. So if you're a newer faculty and you're checking this out, you've never been able to attend in Washington, D.C., you find that this is a new way in which you can attend it. I know many of us are dealing with travel restrictions and so forth, but one of the things that I love about attending this summit is that I walk away from it learning so much about it from a faculty perspective and how to do things back home in your state or in your local communities. And so for faculty that are watching us live today, this is, really one of the things that I think is so valuable about it is how do you take this information and turn it back into the classroom, as Heidi was mentioning. And so one of the things that we've done a lot of is our sessions, or I've attended so many sessions on how do we do this in the classroom? And our department, like many across the nation, have undergone many accreditation changes and really keeping in times with what our workforce is asking for. So I really encourage faculty and staff to take a look at what is our department's mission. And we started this years ago with looking at, well, what do we even have advocacy in our mission, and what does that look like? And we really did a deep dive into creating a mission statement and a vision statement that I'll share in a second here that really looks like fitting advocacy into your curriculum and into your experiences in the classroom. So number one, I ask you, how do advocacy efforts fit into your overall departmental work? You personally as a faculty, or you as a student attending classes in your department? And what are your faculty engagement levels look like? Are your faculty engaged in advocacy? Are your colleagues and peers? So if you're a student listening to this, what are your faculty doing? Are they walking the walk of doing really good service work and advocacy work around this at the local community or maybe the state and of course at the federal level? Students watching this, what is the student engagement like across campus on a variety of topics, right? No other time than the present. We have so many things weighing heavily on us as public health educators right now. We have multiple pandemics. We have multiple waves of COVID-19 occurring. We have anti-racism work that is continuing and will continue to be needing to be addressed on all of our institutional levels and our communities and our schools and our religious organizations and so forth. And so there is advocacy work, whether climate change, which is our focus this year, or it be something else. What is the student engagement looking like? I mean, many of you might be involved right now on campus on how to come back safely and how to stay in campus classrooms. And so there's all kinds of things that you can advocate for and do this work on. And this year just happens to be around environmental health and climate change. And so take a snapshot. What does the picture look like? All right, next slide, please. And so what I mentioned this, that we took a deeper dive in the department as to what, set the stage, be the stage setters as the faculty and staff, so that it trickles into your classroom and into your community or campus community. And so we really took a look at what our vision was, what our mission statement included, and what we really came up with as steps that we were going to do to pursue this mission. So this is our mission, our department vision and mission at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, and we've incorporated and embedded that as a very premier part of what we do in our classroom and in our student organizations and as faculty. So we set the stage, and that starts off with faculty efforts, and then it trickled into curriculum design and combining our assessment with competency needs, and then making sure that we had skills-based activities and projects that we could assess that measured right back to what we said we were going to do, which is create opportunities for advocacy. So it really starts off with the framework and being able to do this work. So take a deeper dive into that. And that's the kind of skills and things you learn at the Washington, D.C. Advocacy Summit, where you have the opportunity to talk with other faculty and how they've done this. And instead of starting from scratch, learn from other organizations and other departments that are doing this well, as you're hearing from folks on this live webinar today. And then you really have to have that departmental and college support, and then creating that vision and mission that drives what we do. And then finding the key faculty that can champion and work with these activities. And it might be just one person out of 10, but it might take momentum. And as we've all said, this is a marathon. Everything we do with advocacy work is not a sprint. It takes years and decades. And so I share this didn't happen overnight. This took year after year after year of our department changing and cultivating and crafting what it looks like today. Next slide, please. And this really, and you can click it again, this really shows what Heidi and others have mentioned, that our department really did this work out of, from the profession. We did this, our work is driven from an accreditation process, our assessment procedures on our campus, but really the workforce drives this. And recognizing that our workforce, the folks hiring our health educators and public health education specialists, that they would be skilled in these areas of advocacy. And so that's where it's really coming from our perspective. Next slide, please. And so a recap of how this can work. We really just, started with that organization and optimizing our resources for improved results. So we're really looking at what resources do we have available, and nowadays we are at tight resources on campuses across the nation, buckling down our budgets and trying to figure out how can we do the most with the least amount, right, of resources. And that looks like time, that looks like people, that looks like human resources. And so making sure that we don't overextend ourselves, but also that what we do put our efforts into, as Dawn mentioned, just making sure that we capitalize on, maybe picking one or two things that we can tackle this academic year. So align your and that's really where we started, was align rigorous curriculum, our delivery of instruction, our assessment of continuous improvement of student achievement. So we really aligned those things to match up so that if we were doing an activity in class, it connected back to the things that we were saying we were assessing, and that matched what we are doing in accreditation processes. And we look at, as I mentioned already, that shared vision, looking at effective and inclusive communication, capacity building, really looking at and banking off of what people are already doing well in your state. Don't reinvent the wheel here, but maybe there's organizations that are boots on the ground that are doing things really well. Can you just learn from them to start with, instead of starting your whole own campaign, but what can we jump into and help someone else that's got a really strong campaign going already? So it's about learning about what capacities exist out there and then building upon those, not trampling over others that are doing some things really well. And then improvement of the inputs in order to strengthen the outputs. So really looking at our student learning outcomes when we're looking at it related to our curriculum. So what can we improve on, but what is it we're really wanting our students to leave our campus skilled in? Next slide, please. And so these are just really great photo ops of a multitude of things that we do on our campus, and we really strategically do these in a way that allows students who might not ever be able to travel to Washington, D.C. We then have, for the last 6 years, had our own legislative summit, if you will, or advocacy summit in our state capital, Madison, Wisconsin. And then we also do them on a local level. So each semester we do legislative gatherings in our region for public health, and we bring all of the local legislators together, and we bring together hundreds of people. And so our students are very much in part of planning that, coordinating that, and engaging in that, and learning how to communicate with their legislators on a very, very, very local level. And not just legislators, but also school boards and other opportunities in the community where they're engaging in advocacy efforts. So next slide, please. And so just that curriculum process, just to reiterate, it's skills-based, it's driven by the workforce, it's driven by accreditation. We also heavily look at faculty workload. So again, not taking on more than our capacity within in a department or within your region, obviously. And then looking at policy and advocacy courses. Maybe you don't have a freestanding advocacy and policy course yet. And so how can you incorporate it into a methods course? How can you incorporate it into a program planning course? How can it be incorporated into a content area course? Environmental health, right? A great class for this Virtual Advocacy Summit to be incorporated into, and I know we'll be doing that on our campus as well. And so looking at program student learning outcomes, and then maybe assignments and rubrics that lead back to that. And again, it might not be a freestanding advocacy and policy class, but you can embed it into a course and using assignments that help them develop those skills on a more micro level, if it has to be that. And then one of the things that we really encourage faculty to do is look at curriculum assessment grants on your campus. This is a way for faculty to have access to funding to allow them to do that deeper research and that deeper aligning evaluation and assessment tools to that. And so that's a big part of what we did as well. And then advocacy activities prior to having a course. Again, let your students drive this. If you're listening and you're a student, how can you drive these things on your campus? Maybe there isn't an advocacy and policy course. So do you have a student health organization? Do you have an Eta Sigma Gamma chapter? Are there other ways for you to raise funding to travel to your state legislature's offices, or do a campaign virtually this year in your own backyard? And so we really look at ways to do those individual or group projects, and maybe it's in different courses where you can do that. So advocacy without strategy does not work, and you heard that from Dawn, you're hearing that from Heidi, Mustafa. Everything about advocacy has a process and does better when you have skills behind that help us get to that route. Next slide, please. And then just referencing things. This is how we would reference, for example, things in our course syllabi, where we have that conceptual framework where we're linking it back to the Council on Linkages, and linking it with our CHES and MCHES, competencies and skills. And so just making sure that those frameworks are adopted and put into our coursework, and that we're helping our students really make those connections, that this skill-based activity that you're doing connects to this area of responsibility, which connects to a Council on Linkage, which connects to accreditation. And the students don't always have that bigger, broader view of what accreditation means, but they do know and understand that it means that they're part of a really great, strong program that's giving them good student learning outcomes. That really for them, it's about workforce and higher ability, right? And connectivity in the workplace. So we really make those connections with our students for that. And then again, just making sure that our faculty have chosen to represent a synthesis of these frameworks. This would be an example of how it might look: 5 program student learning outcomes, and what we might have written in our syllabus and how it would connect. And I won't bore you with reading through those, but this is very specific, deep dive into what it would look like on a syllabus. Next slide, please. And then again, tying it back to a program student learning outcome, and how we might assess that, and what we would expect by the end of this course, and what they would be able to do. Next slide, please. And again, this might be really deep dive into it, but those of you that like to look at it connected and how things are connected with the domains, the learning domains, NCHEC. And again, I'm really happy to share all of the work that we've done. We've shared this before at a national summit in DC. We have an entire site that if you want access to that, you can message me and we can connect and help if you're developing curriculum around this and how to connect it back to CEF or back to NCHEC. Next slide, please. And development of a course, again, we just really look at how to make sure that we're overseeing those advocacy experiences, maybe on a local experience, a state level, policy projects that might be really connected to something on campus or a student organization. And then we really reinforce and connect these dots within our curriculum. So our students sequentially move through what we call a block system. So we introduce a concept about advocacy in our 200 level classes. It's reinforced in the next block, and then they're actually practicing and being assessed on those skills in another higher level course. But again, they're really seeing it throughout their whole curriculum, and it's not just a one and done sort of experience for them. Next slide, please. And so next steps, we just encourage you, number one, to come to the virtual summit, but look at how you can incorporate this into either research, how you can connect this with your assessment procedures. Can this even be incorporated into your graduate coursework? Do you have graduate assistants that can help with this? Absolutely. Do you have student TAs that can help with this? Absolutely. And teaching others how to make this work on their campus as well. Next slide, please. That's it. Questions?
Great. Well, thank you to all of our great presenters. That was a wonderful, wonderful presentations. We did receive some questions throughout all 4 of your presentations. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question. What method of contacting elected officials works best? I've reached out to local officials via email and phone and have not received a response. Is there, Dawn, do you want to start us off, and Heidi maybe?
Yeah, happy to. I think those are the first steps, and those do make a difference. So those typically offices will like tick that, and your emails have the least impact, and a handwritten letter is the most impact when you're reaching out. But what really matters is volume. That's when they'll respond to you, or your particular expertise. So if you can say, hey, it's not just me. I've got 10 public health experts that think that this is a real problem with our community, and then you submit that letter and you submit a letter to the editor to your newspaper, they will call you back for sure. If you're a student and you can say, I've got the student government, I've got the Greeks, I've got the Republicans and the Democrats, they've all signed on to my letter, that's how you'll get a full meeting. And I would also just suggest calling the district office if it's a state or national rep. So instead of calling directly, they're like line where they just take public comment and say, hey, I'm asking for a meeting, I'm in the district. Can I have a meeting with your local official?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Dawn said. In addition, if if you're talking about an elected official at your state level and you have the opportunity, visit the state house. We find that when they send in the pages to let somebody know that a constituent is out there and wanting to meet with them, that often they will come out because you have taken the time to actually show up. In addition, you can call ahead and try to get on the legislator schedule for that day. And you know that often they love to have their constituents come and visit them. So it just sometimes if they agree with us, they're often more likely, I've found, to take the meeting. Sometimes I've had those same struggles when I'm reaching out to legislators who don't agree with me. So in those cases, maybe you're better off to contact somebody who's like the chair of a committee that might be dealing with that issue, or go outside of just your specifically elected official when you're not getting any response at all.
Great, thank you. We have another question. Heidi, what's your most positive experience with the advocacy efforts you've been involved in?
It's hard to pick one. I would say one of the most positive, though, is when I've traveled to the Advocacy Summit and taken students with me. And often our students are really nervous about advocacy before they attend the summit, and they think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to go into a senator's office. And then they come out and they say, we met with those staffers and they were just normal people. They just had a conversation with us. I think I could call and talk to them on the phone regularly. So I think that light bulb that goes off for our students when we teach them has really been positive for me. But then in addition, we've had some success here on the state level when we have organized. We hosted an advocacy summit day here at the state level, similar to what Sophe does at the federal level. And we've actually had some success in our asks previously. So.
Great, thank you. Our next question. Do you have any concessions? It's a very difficult time for me and economically, but I do want to attend. So thank you for that question. We do. Sophe does offer 21st century scholarships to attend the summit, and these are available to students and practitioners. The deadline to apply for that is today, September 8th. So we will go ahead and put the link to where you can find the application for that into the chat so that you can access that. Another comment, thank you to our Sophe Advocacy Summit preview session speakers. Another question, Heidi, how would you suggest a student approach university faculty/staff to get more involved in advocacy work?
Wow, I would love students to approach me and say that they are really interested in advocacy work. I think as a faculty member, if you put yourself out there and you let your students know what you're interested in and that you would be more than willing to mentor them in this area, there are students who would love to engage. I do it often when I teach my advocacy and policy course. I tell them that, if they have an interest in that area, I would love to work with them. They can attend the Advocacy Summit. We've submitted proposals together with students who are interested. We've written articles about advocacy together. So I think once you start to become known in your department as that person, the students will come out of the woodwork to ask to work with you.
I'm going to answer that as well. A lot of our students get course credit for interning in advocacy campaigns. And I would say regardless of your, expertise, I think you probably could just talk to professors and say, is there like a 100X course where you can get like an internship and get 3 or 4 units? Personally, I got 9 units my senior year for working with PIRG on a climate campaign. So just ask your professors and say, hey, would you sponsor me for that? And then you can find a nonprofit group that can help you through the process.
Okay, another question. Dawn, how long did it take the Vanderbilt group to advocate the administration successfully on their climate change proposal?
That campaign only took a year.
Oh, and then a follow-up to that. And what are the biggest obstacles with campus advocacy efforts?
So we're running this campaign in 16 states right now. I think the 2 biggest mistakes are, one, only meeting with the decision makers and not doing any of the campaign work. Advocacy is kind of like the point of the spear, right? It's got to be sharp. You've got to have a really good meeting, but really all of the pressure comes from the person behind it, right? So you've got to have all the petition signatures. You've got to have the LTEs. You've got to have the sign-ons from public health officials and economists saying it's the right thing to do. So you've got to do all of that before you do, make the hard ask. And then some people go the other way where they don't meet with the person first and then they just start yelling at them. Don't do that. So you've got to do the meeting first and go, hey, I'm thinking of starting the campaign. Like, what do you think? What would hold you back from making this decision? And they'll often just tell you and say, like, I need to hear from these professors on campus and these alumni. So often it just takes that, and then you know how to run your campaign. So don't fall into either of those traps.
Great, thank you. What are the biggest mistakes you have seen running advocacy campaigns?
I would say giving up. Yeah. I would hands down say not staying the course. Like, I think so many times too I see when we take groups to our state or to a local issue and it might not get passed or resolved. I see so often folks want to just, move on to the next thing, move on. And we often see it. It's just staying the course, going back, and it looks, and like legislative years, in sessions, it just takes, a lot of it takes time and so much perseverance. And so I think one of the biggest things I see is that groups or individuals don't see it happen fast enough. And those of us who have been doing this work 20 plus years, we see that it takes years to get sexuality education standards developed and incorporated, all the way to things that happen with health education core, physical education and health education core standards in the curriculum at a national level. I mean, these things took years and decades, and not to give up. And I think it goes back to what Dawn said. It's constantly figuring out which angle maybe, or which message is sticking, or and that just takes time as well. And sometimes what one time doesn't work, we have to try it a different way and get our voices heard. And that is frustrating sometimes. And I know you can get tired and wore down. We all feel that. We all feel that right now on many levels, but this is not the time to throw in the towel on climate change or any of the things that we're facing. This is
I think Mustafa.
Another mistake would be not believing in yourself and underestimating yourself, because you do have a voice, and if you stay persistent and just keep on, you will definitely reach out. The mistake is people, as Keely said, giving up, but also not believing in yourself. You gotta believe in yourself and be persistent.
And I would just like to add one thing that I've seen cause people problems is you really have to do your background work on your priority person, your target individual, who has the power to make the change that you want to see. And so you need to figure out who is that person or that group of individuals. You need to figure out what makes them tick, what they're interested in. If that's a legislator, what do they typically vote for and against, and where's their hometown, and who are their people that they usually receive their advice from, and get to know as much about those individuals and what makes them tick as possible. You're wasting your time if you spend all of this energy on an advocacy effort and you don't have the right target.
And I want to echo that too, what Heidi's saying is, and believe in yourself. And then it's something that we've been doing for the last 5 years, is studying and researching what actually works in these offices. And so it kind of goes back to what Dawn said, and really spending the time with the legislative aides, who are the voices in these offices to their representative. And we have been studying at a state level and at the national level what actually works from their actual offices and from their voices, and researching what actually makes a difference in their offices, and what messages land well with them, the types of communication that they like, or don't do well in their offices. And then that goes right back to what Heidi says. Some offices really do different things and respond differently. And so we've been researching that, and we'll be sharing a lot of that data in the forthcoming years about that. But that's a huge part of this too, is really knowing not only the legislator, but their office, and then their staff, but then, and it's pivoting each time something doesn't work, and going back to the drawing board a little bit.
Great. Thank you for all of those really engaging questions. We have reached an hour, but just as a reminder to please fill out the evaluation form. The link will be shared in the chat, but there is also this QR code, and someone will be, if you complete the evaluation, you will be entered into a drawing for a chance to win a 1-year Sophe membership. So I just want to take this time to say thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to all of our great presenters for sharing their expertise in this area. And we hope that you all can join us October 13th and 14th to Sophe's Virtual Advocacy Summit. We will have a short video that does showcase and share the Virtual Advocacy Summit platform. And